Welcome in, Buckeye backers. Another week and another one in the books. It was a great win in Chicago, the friendly confines of Wrigley Field. Vegas Matt is here on the show again. Thanks for coming, man.
Thanks for having me. Even though
the Buckeye himself.
6:30 shows are a little rough, my friend. Not gonna lie.
Oh, you gotta love it. You gotta love waking up early on the West Coast. Before we get any further, let's get into that intro, baby. Here we go.
Proud of our young people, and most especially in 310 days in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
No, Prince's going to throw for it. Got to get it off. They go for the ball game. Touchdown! Touchdown! Michael Jenkins on 4th and 1. Holy Buckeye! Under pressure, throws it. Incomplete. The Buckeyes win.
It's so easy to be average. The hell with that. We don't want to coach average. Did you push yourself to be great today? Did you do it? If you didn't do it, you lost today.
Bill Jones gets the snap, takes a run, drops back to pass, fires long. Down the right side, going toward the end zone, and it is caught. Touchdown! And it's Devin Smith again. Samuel cuts it back. Ohio State wins.
Pitches to Archer Griffin, number 45, and Griffin fighting up the sideline. And he gets it into Michigan territory. A great individual effort from the 20-yard line. Eddie George finds a hole.
Smith in trouble. Spins away from it. 40, 45, 50, 35. Roy Smith to throw. Steps up. Delivers deep down the field. He's got a receiver. Olave. Touchdown Buckeyes.
In a spot in the national championship game. It's on the way. No good. He hooked it. And Georgia is going to survive.
I haven't scored a touchdown in a long time, so it felt good. Give all the credit on the word of God. And when I'm coming around the edge and I see JT punch it out, I said it downstairs. There's no chance in hell I was diving on that ball. I was trying to scoop and score no matter what.
Howard runs it. First down, Moore slides down inside the 40. Ohio State.
Oh, man, it is to be continued. This is the season, man. This is the one we've been waiting for. We are through all the cupcake games. Northwestern is in the books. We got to talk about it a little bit before we move on, so let's get into Ohio State versus Northwestern's. Man, the Buckeyes dominated, but after a really slow start.
Yeah, they did.
What do you think?
Sorry about that. You caught me off guard for a second. I look at a game like this and I say it was a straight business trip, right?
Yep.
They went in there, took care of business, got out. I would say the thing that really caught me with the first half was you started to get that feeling as an Ohio State fan, the feeling of last year, where you thought, oh my goodness, the other team's controlling the game. They're controlling the tempo. This is going to be a tight game. How are we going to get that first score? I felt that quite a bit last year with that team, because I just wasn't sure how each and every game was going to pull out. And then you go to this year and you really see that the second Ohio State score made it 7-7. Obviously, the next series was the block punt, and kind of the game was decided from there. So I saw a game where last year would have been super tight, close, maybe even a loss, to this team this year flipping the script, taking control of the game and dominating. How about you?
Well, it's a, kind of senior-laden team. Like, everyone on the defense should be in the NFL right now. But what Jack Lausch did, man, he was playing like an All-American in the first quarter, keeping the ball away from Ohio State. That's how you knock off a juggernaut, right? You take possession, drive all the way down the field. Dude started off 7 of 11 for 97 yards right into the second quarter. The defense, they were blitzing like crazy, which I love the dial up from the blitzes, but they were like out of control blitzes with no success. They weren't really getting anywhere. And when they did, Lausch was able to escape them and make big plays out of it. They had long drives, almost scored on the first drive, and thank God for Jack Sawyer punching that ball out and keeping them from scoring there. because, you give a team like that some momentum and they stick around for a little while. And they did. It just didn't last long. That back shoulder throw to against Burke, I mean, Burke's had his struggles, and I read somewhere today that before this game, of the passes he was targeted, 28 passes on the year, 23 had been completion. So that's if that stat holds out, and I got to find it somewhere, I haven't been able to find it. That is a terrible stat percentage wise. But both long passes against Burke were to Bryce Kurtz, and he was having a hell of a day too. Also, they were 4 of 5 on third downs going into that second quarter, a little bit into that second quarter. And that TD in the second quarter with a 10-yard scamper, Jack Loush was just looking like the man. I mean, if it weren't for Jack Sawyer's punching the ball out, it could have been 14-0 before Ohio State scored. And then it just imploded. Like I said, just having so many experienced guys on that defense, really, they turned it up, and the offense started playing well too. They just needed a spark. They got their spark with that blocked punt, and it was all downhill for Northwestern from there.
Yeah, but that was the difference is if you do look at Northwestern's first 2 drives, they had an 11-play drive, obviously turnover. Second drive was 13-play drive, touchdown. They were controlling that game, and they were executing exactly the way they wanted to. That's how
Absolutely.
You do Ohio State. You sustain double-digit drives. You keep their offense off the field. You get some points as a result of it. I mean, that first half felt like it was going to be over in an hour. That's how successful Northwestern was. And I'm talking real-time hour, not game time hour. So they were executing at a high level. And again, in the past, Ohio State teams have struggled in these kind of games where the other team takes control, they flip the script. And in this year, what we saw was they said, no, this is our game. This is how we're going to execute. And they went out and did it. And that's what I think is the key difference between this team and other years.
Mike Germany says, OH. Ironically about that, man, he's covering the country, but he's a Michigan fan. So we'll have him on for the Michigan-Ohio State game for sure. Great reporter. And he is one of the best Michigan fans to talk to, by the way. So if you see a article by him from College Football Dogs, check it out. He's legit. He's talking about the Spygate, and he's one that was maybe we were wrong, and you don't hear that much from Michigan fans. So good on Mike Germany's.
He's a good man, and he's unbiased. He's a good writer. Go check him out.
Sure.
Yeah.
We'll take it every time. Yeah, he'll be on here for the Michigan podcast. So let's get back to Northwestern anyway. Northwestern, man, just the fact that they hung in there, but we turned the script. We got that one thing, we capitalized it. When you smell blood in the water, you attack, and they did. And that's exactly what we wanted to do. The one other thing that I want to comment on was not passing the ball in the beginning of the game. I talked about it before, and you talked about it. You said, hey, it's Ohio State. We need to dominate in the trenches. We need to push this team around. They were 16th in the country in rush defense, 100th in pass defense. My personal opinion is you smell it, you smell that blood in the water, and you attack it. You go after their terrible pass defense. You get ahead, and then you crush them from there. Crush their will through the running game. So they kind of did that when they came out in the second half. They weren't passing the ball a lot in the first half, but the second half they came out and they were passing like crazy. Ended the day with 400 and some yards. 420 total yards.
Yeah.
173 rushing, 247 passing. So they took care of business in the second half. Northwestern only had 84 yards in the second half. So 31-7. Second half, all unanswered points, 31 straight unanswered points. Ohio State is 35-1 all time against Northwestern. Man, this is the first team to hold Ohio State without scoring in the first quarter. So they did their job.
Absolutely. But again, this was a business trip. And on Thursday, we described this as a controlled game. And looking back on that word is the perfect way to summarize this game. You went into Wrigley, makeshift stadium, pesky little team. Northwestern always plays Ohio State tough at home. I'm going to call that home for them. And Ohio State executed their business, 24-point win, you got out the door. You're not going to just blow every team out every single game. We all realize that there is some talent in the Big Ten. And the fact that you score 31 unanswered, you took a game that could have went sideways last year, and this year you said, no, this is our game. We're going to take control back. And they did, and they dominated. They did everything we wanted them to see against a 4-5 team.
Yeah, and the story of the game, none other than Carnell Tate, the third wide receiver on this team, probably one of the best wide receivers in the nation. Once he gets a chance to unleash, man, he's going to have a hell of a season. Next year, Carnell Tate's going to explode. I'm telling you, he's going to explode. And he did this game. He showed you what next year is going to be like. So we got a few of the clips from Carnell Tate. We got to show these. Man, look at this catch over the middle. This is what I posted. This is the difference between losing a game against an unranked team and going on for the win. Like plays like that, you need championship level team. When your backups are making dives in the end zone like that for a touchdown, holy shit. And all the throws, the catches over the middle for a second touchdown of the game, that's kind of what we said was going to happen, right? You're going to have a lot of throws over the middle. You're not going to target the corner of the end zone. Did you see any fades to the corner of the end zone? Nope.
No.
So that wasn't, I don't think that was in their offensive game plan. They said it wasn't going to, the field was not going to, change their offense, but I believe it did. Unless they really had to. They weren't throwing to the corner of the end zone. Why would you?
They didn't need to either. So, yeah.
As long as you can wrap up that game and not have a chance of anyone getting injured, that's what they did.
Yeah, and it was clear they were going to get the ball to Tate, and rightfully so, being a homecoming, being an emotional game coming back, and he executed. I mean, the video clip you're showing, these are contested catches. These aren't wide open.
Two guys. He was diving in between two dudes.
And that's what you need
getting hit while catching the ball. And then the dive in the end zone. He dove from 4 yards out to catch it 1 yard deep in the end zone, just laid completely out. Another one, he stops, catches it over the middle, gets hit by two dudes, and jumps into the end zone.
Absolutely.
A hell of a day. And the dude deserved every second of that, man. I mean, everyone knows now what happened to him. Like his mom was killed in a drive-by shooting in Chicago, 2023. And man, this guy just comes out and has a storybook ending for a game in Chicago. Like Ryan Day said he had over 25 people there watching him from his family and friends from the south side of Chicago. He had 4 receptions, 52 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Man, Day mentioned, like, you know what? The game doesn't care. It doesn't care what happened to you outside of the game. But you know who does? The team. Everyone around the team was supporting behind him, and all those family members that showed up for him. It's just a testament to what the dude is, man. The best third wide receiver in the nation. Any team in the nation would take him as a starting wide receiver right now, and he's still at Ohio State. The welcome home party was great for Carnell Tate.
That's exactly right. And what that showed me is that is a true family locker room, because
Absolutely.
It was very clear they were getting him the ball. And it was very clear the team supported getting him the ball. And it was very clear Ryan Day cared about getting him the ball. And you do all that because you're not being selfish. Jeremiah Smith, Abuka, Henderson, none of them are being selfish. You're saying, yes, get him the ball. This is his homecoming. He's had a really rough couple of years. We do this for our brother. And those kind of locker rooms can overcome adversity, meaning they can overcome being down at halftime, getting metaphorically punched in the mouth. And so having that strong locker room, I think, is really going to resonate here in November, December.
Yeah, and when you do a morning show, you got to have that coffee, man. So cheers.
Amen to that.
I'm looking for the best coffee.
We got to get you a Yeti mug.
Oh, I have one.
Ohio State.
I love my little simple coffee cup.
It's more about branding. Come on.
Hey, I'm looking for someone to put their name on this coffee cup eventually. So that's what I'm waiting for.
Patience, my friend.
Give me those best coffees out there if you have it in the comments. All right. So we got the Hawkeyes, man. Hawkaholics. Morning, boys.
Yes, sir. It is morning.
Who hacked Mike Germanise's account? Yeah, he gave us the OH, and of course we're gonna give him the IO back. At Michigan fan giving us the OH. Gotta love it. Gotta freaking love it. So what do we move on to next? it is time, man. I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't believe I'm saying it out loud. It's Indiana week, and we're pumped about it. I'm going to be there watching this game, taking my daughter to her first Ohio State game. So we're going to do everything. I mean, I guess I got to go to, skull session beforehand, watch the players come out, and see what kind of experience we can give her 9-year-old girl at her first Ohio State game. She's pumped. I keep telling her, joking around with her, I sold my tickets. I sold our tickets. We're not going. And she's like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't.
That's cruel. That's what my wife keeps saying. Yeah, that's cruel, man. You don't tell people you sold Ohio State tickets, man. That ain't right.
That's true. Because game day will be there. Big noon kickoff's going to be there for the noon game. Ohio State hasn't allowed a touchdown, or is only given up 2 touchdowns. One yesterday, one against Nebraska, and that is only 2 since the Oregon loss. All right. So they haven't been giving up a lot of touchdowns. I think they'll give up 1 or 2 against Indiana with that top-ranked scoring offense.
Maybe. I mean, I'll go out on a limb right now, and I'll say I think the Michigan game is going to be tougher than Indiana.
Really?
I think Ohio State's going to be jacked up. They haven't had a top 10 game at home this year. I don't care if it's a noon kickoff. I don't know what you're going to get out of Indiana. I don't.
Sure.
Really?
Well, I mean, Ohio State started off at 10.5-point favorite in the early betting line. So
that's what I'm telling you.
Vegas is seeing something different with Ohio State and Indiana. But Indiana, they're doing all the right things right now. That 8-year extension for Kurt Signetti, $8 million, $1 million retention bonus. I got to give them credit for that. I mean, at least they're a team trying. No one else in the Big Ten is trying to win the Big Ten. It's just Oregon, Ohio State, and Michigan, and Penn State, sort of.
Was the extension 8 years, $72 million? I thought that's what I heard. Are you talking $9 million a year for an Indiana football coach? Good for them.
That's awesome. I mean, they're spending the Big Ten money. They're spending that Fox money.
Yes.
This is why Ohio State has to play big noon kickoff games every fucking week.
It is why Purdue's
the only one doing anything.
Hire an average MAC coach every time it comes around.
Yeah.
Good for Indiana.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome that they did it. And you know what? Indiana hired the right coach, man. And they're keeping him, spending the money.
Yeah.
And Iowa is not trying to win the Big Ten. You're right. They got to do something there in Iowa. You go out, you don't get Tim Brewster, man.
You can't. You're stuck with Ferentz until he wants to leave. You can't fire.
That's
Ferentz.
true.
You're in a hard place there.
Iowa's got everything to be successful now that Kirk Ferentz has kind of built it up to like a regular contender, but that's for a different story.
Yeah, it
different
is.
Day, different podcast.
And maybe Indiana, I don't know. It's really going to be about tone and tempo.
BC's quarterback. There we go. Yeah, get a quarterback in there for sure.
Maybe. But to me, I think I do think there's a massive gap or difference between talent between the two teams still. You can be pesky and spunky and 10-0 when you're playing a bunch of mediocre football teams.
100 ranked strength of schedule for the Hoosiers. 100th in the nation. 100th in the nation strength of schedule. No one else in the top 5 in the college football playoff has below 56 strength of schedule. So it's pretty poor. Yeah.
No, and again, we talk. The reason why we love odds and gambling in Vegas and all that stuff is because Vegas is usually right. And I say that if you go to the spread this week, it started at 30.5 and you saw it drop to 28 by the time kickoff occurred. And what you're really seeing with that ultimately, and this is going against the grain of Ohio State fans, which is pretty tough, is you probably saw a lot of money and a lot of sharps gobbling up Northwestern at plus 30, plus 29, plus 28. Well, look at the score. They won by 24. So the point of that is, more often than not, Vegas has a really good feel for games. So when they come out right away at that 10.5, what they're saying is, 31-20 type game is kind of what they're expecting right off the bat. So when Vegas tells me that they think Ohio State's going to win by double digits, that's kind of where I'm rolling with that.
Going to go with double digits. Going to go with Vegas. Take them.
Always.
There's a reason we call you Vegas, because you know it. better than anyone else.
And there's the
All right.
reason the strip looks like the strip, man, because they don't lose very often.
This will be the first ranked team the Hoosiers play all year. They've won every game by 14 points until Michigan came to town. And that was really a game that I wanted to see how they hold up against the defensive and offensive line in the trenches, because I think that's where the difference is. They have the skill players, they have the quarterback, they have a pretty good defense too. But I wanted to see how they do against the best of the best on the defensive line specifically for Michigan. And they held them in the second half. I mean, the first half they came out slinging, but in the second half it was a little different story. And they couldn't get Michigan just couldn't score. They don't have an offense, so what do you say to that? I mean, Michigan can't pass the ball; they have to run the ball. They can't score, right? There was how many field goals were there? 1 touchdown for 6 points that gave them 12
Indiana
or 9. They had 3 field goals. Michigan had 3 field goals against Indiana. And it was all because Indiana's defense just shut them down in the red zone.
Yeah, and it was a tale of two halves in that game too. And that's where I'm interested to see how the defense matches up. But I'll be honest, there were some things from our secondary yesterday. Kind of had me a little bit troublesome. Igmanosin, another penalty, and it was a blatantly obvious PI. I'm not even going to debate it. Burke is. I understand there were some good throws and some good routes, so I'm not going to bash him.
That back shoulder, you can't. It was just a good throw. That back shoulder happens to everyone.
That's why I said I'm not going to bash him.
However,
I am losing a little bit of confidence in Burke man-to-man, one-on-one. I just am. I'm not. I don't know if he's at that first-round cornerback talent that we were kind of thinking he could be coming into this season. So the secondary in terms of just straight coverage is a little bit of a concern to me. I know Indiana's got some pretty good wide receivers. Rourke's going to sling it. This is his Super Bowl. He has nothing to lose. And so I think the secondary, Ohio State secondary versus Indiana wide receivers, that's going to be the matchup we got to watch closely.
Absolutely. One more thing. We were talking about red zone and Ohio State's red zone offense. They are first in the nation. 38 attempts in the red zone. 33 have been touchdowns. So probably not going to be holding Ohio State to field goals the whole time. But you mentioned those big plays, that passing plays, Rourke, Surratt on the outside. They are going to get their plays and their chunk plays. They have 44 passes over 20 yards this season, first in the Big Ten. I don't know where that is nationally. I haven't looked that up yet, but that's something that I need to do. So I might have that back for you after the break. But they're going to get their chunk plays, and they're going to get some of them. So we just have to be able to stop them in the red zone like this defense has done all year. Bend, but don't break. Don't allow touchdowns. Those long touchdowns are what killed us against Oregon. So if we can keep those pass plays to, those, they'll have a couple of their 20-yarders. It's going to happen. We just got to make sure those aren't in the end zone.
I agree. And it's fine. Whatever you give up until the red zone, I'm fine with. But if you hold up, either force field goals or get a turnover here and there, I think that's going to make or break the difference here.
Absolutely. Oh, one more thing we forgot to mention back to the Northwestern game. The dirty play, man. Did you saw it, right?
No.
I mean, it was all over social media. So if you didn't see it, I got it. I'll show it to you right now. And I slowed it down a little bit and rewinded it, showed it again. So we still didn't talk about Jeremiah Smith having 100 yards receiving. So he still had a game for a freshman wide receiver. He's the man. Watch this play. Tell me what you think. All right. This is after the tackle. Look at that ankle, man. Twisting it, just using all his force to twist that ankle. Jeremiah Smith goes out, gets his ankle retaped because of this. I mean, strictly because of this. We thought, probably it was going to be the field that caused an injury for Ohio State. No, it was Northwestern, a team that you wouldn't expect it from. I mean, these guys are academic All-Americans, all of them, and they're twisting ankles after the play's already over. Just poor sportsmanship. Terrible. I mean, you have the Maurice Claret of wide receivers out there, and they're twisting his ankle after the play. And you'd expect something like this from Michigan, untying Dobbins' shoe and everything afterwards. after he was tackled back in, what was that, 2019? No.
Before then.
It was before that.
It
Anyway,
just doesn't make any sense.
I just didn't expect it from Northwestern.
I would never expect that from Northwestern. I do kind of think of them being in the upper echelon of sportsmanship and intelligence. It also just doesn't make any sense. I get it. Back in the day, if you had one really elite player, right? If you had an elite quarterback pulling stunts like this, you saw it quite a bit. Doing something to Jeremiah Smith is just foolish. Ohio State's still going to beat you. It doesn't change your course in any way, shape, or form. It's just bad sportsmanship. And quite honestly, with all the officials on the field now, they got to catch this stuff. They got to be a little bit better. You saw the official running on the sideline. He was probably 4 yards from that play, and he had that view looking in on that play. He's got to catch it.
Not only that, they got to do something after the fact. I mean, when it's that blatant and dirty, the dude needs to be injected for a game. I mean, you can't just be twisting on dude's ankles after the play's over. It was purposeful. It was obviously purposeful. It was dirty, and it has no place in college football or in football in general.
At any level. Never do.
I mean, level. If I was coaching and I saw my kid do that, they'd be out. I'd pull them out myself.
I would agree. There's just no place to intentionally hurt somebody in the game of football. Accidents happen, injuries happen, that's fine. You can't do it intentionally.
For sure. All right, we got to get back to paying the bills. It's time to get spicy Dano seasoning in the house. Here we go.
Yum, yum, get you some. Yum, yum, get you some. Yum, yum, get you some. Yum, yum, get you some.
Dano seasoning, food's favorite flavor.
Yum, yum, get you some.
I'm Joe Burrito, your favorite burrito. Whoa, whoa.
Joe, we all know you're the best.
What?
You can always do better.
What you got?
Try the new Dano's Hot Chipotle.
Hey. Ooh, that's spicy. Yum, yum.
Yum, yum, get you some.
Yum, yum, get you some. And I told you I would look it up while we were at break. Indiana is 11th in 20-plus yard passing plays, 11th in the nation. So they're going to chuck it up against Ohio State, and that's where I would look to hit. But now we got to get into the college football playoffs, man. This was a day for the college football playoffs. And really the SEC is starting to kind of get put in place, right? We had LSU getting taken down. We had Tennessee getting taken down. Who's left to contend? We got Texas. We got Alabama. We got Georgia. We got Ole Miss. Do you think Ole Miss has a chance now?
A&M.
A&M. Oh, I forgot about A&M. Yeah.
A&M right now controls their own destiny. They
so A&M against Texas last week of the season. That's going to be a game to watch, man. Talk about bad blood. They haven't played for years, and now it's back. Texas A&M hates that Texas in the SEC, so they're going to play each other for all the marbles in the SEC.
Yeah. So right now you got two one-loss conference in the SEC, and that's Texas and Texas A&M. That will settle itself, because they played each other last week of the season. And then you have 4 two-loss teams headlined by Georgia, who Georgia is now done with their SEC schedule. I'm assuming they play some cupcake next week, and then they always finish with Georgia Tech, an ACC opponent. So Georgia's at 6-2. They're done. You got Tennessee, Alabama, and Ole Miss with 2 losses. Tennessee has 1 more SEC game. Ole Miss and Alabama have 2. I'll put it really simply, that if all favorites, at least according to Vegas, win out in the SEC for the rest of the year, it will be Texas, Alabama in the SEC championship game. So just look at whoever's a favorite wins, no questions asked. It will be Texas and Alabama in the SEC championship.
And I think this helps the case for the SEC getting 4 in. Now it's a little bit more defined, and you have some of the bigger name programs that are going to make it, with LSU being out, with Missouri being out of it now. It looks good. They're in having 4 teams in, so they should stop complaining now.
It makes me sick to my stomach, but I would absolutely advocate for 4 SEC teams in there. And again, their schedules are brutal. Every time we're turning on the TV at 7:30 at night, we're watching a really good SEC football game. And kudos to them. Their scheduling was fantastic this year. A lot of competitive games. I have no problem losing 2 games. I love what Georgia did this year because Georgia has a brutal schedule, and they took care of business against Tennessee. What people tell me is a tough team. I'll believe it when I see it. But at least Georgia has a lot of tough games on their schedule, and they have 2 losses. They deserve to be in the playoff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Georgia should be in. And I think they will. They're going to jump up now. But we got to go out to the Big 12, man. The Big 12 is Colorado Buffaloes, man. Now with BYU losing, holy shit. Kansas finally showed up for a game.
They did, and I kept looking all week. That line stayed at BYU -3. It actually dropped to -2.5, and I kept saying, okay, a 3-6 Kansas team. What am I missing here? And again, always go towards Vegas. Vegas knows
just
what
talent.
they're talking about. Yeah, but
it was time. It was time. It's this time of year every year that one of these undefeated teams just drops to someone. I mean, you saw it with Oregon. Oregon had struggled against the Badgers. And we kind of knew it to start the season. Actually, in fact, I picked Oregon to lose their only loss of the season to be against the Badgers in Madison because it's just a struggle traveling all the way across the country. And Kansas had to travel, half the country, I guess. But traveling across country, playing a game, it's hard to do. Kansas showed up. Oregon just squeaked by. It's a good team. College football this time of year.
We've talked about that, though, where every good team has that stumbling block game.
Absolutely.
All national championship teams, they have that game. They win by 3 that they should have won by more. But again, that spread closed at -13.5.
Yeah.
So, again, Vegas is telling you close game. They think so, too. And the great teams find a way to win when they shouldn't. And Oregon should not have won that game. They were down by 7 going into the fourth quarter. They found a way to win. BYU did not. That is the difference between great and elite, and Oregon proved that there. They are clearly the best team in the country at this time. And what the Big 12 did here ultimately is they're now down to 1 team. It's going to be BYU, Colorado in the Big 12 championship game, and the winner's going to decide who goes to the playoff.
So speaking of that, who does Colorado have left?
They have Kansas next week at Kansas, and then they finish against Oklahoma State, who might be the most disappointing team in the country this year.
Yeah. So that, I mean, oof.
They are 0-7 in the Big 12.
They're 17th right now, Colorado?
Good. Yes.
Colorado, the Buffs. Yeah. So we talked about it earlier. Is Boise State going to jump up and be one of the top 4 teams with a bye in the college football playoff? I don't think so. I think with Buffs continuing to win, they jump up and get just a notch above Boise State.
Maybe. I think I could see
just that Heisman candidate in Hunter. They're going to have all of that around them. I mean, people are starting to jump on the train again. I think people got a little upset with that train happening too early last year, but now it's late in November, and they are a team that only has the 1 loss, right? 2 losses. Yeah.
They lost to Nebraska and they lost to Kansas State, but they only have 1 loss in conference. And I'll say it right now, Travis Hunter should be the Heisman Trophy winner. I will debate that with anybody. The amount of
Austin Jonty still has a case. I know it's not against the best.
Travis Hunter has 200 more snaps on the field this year than anybody else in college football. I mean, when
color me convinced
at a high level, I think that should be rewarded. I would give it to him right now. Hands down.
There's no doubt.
Not taking anything away from Genty. He's had a great year as a running back. It's not 1997. I don't really care about running back numbers. It goes to Hunter to me, hands down. But that's where, possibly you could see Colorado if they keep winning. I think the argument the committee would make is we want to see teams that are hot going into October, November, December, and we're going to reward that really good play. So they would be on a 6-game, maybe a 7-game winning streak. Let's say they win the conference championship. They'd have 7 in a row. Obviously, the limelight. You could see Colorado squeak in as that 4 seed. And I think what the really interesting story is what's going on with the ACC.
And one of their losses came early in the season too, so that makes it look a lot better. Losing to
also
Nebraska
bad.
earlier in the season, yeah.
It's now looking like a bad loss, though. Same with Kansas State. That is not looking like a good loss anymore.
So who do they have that they've beat that's ranked currently?
Nobody.
Yeah,
They don't have a ranked win on their schedule.
That's where I don't know. I don't know if you can bump them against Boise State because Boise State has the best loss in the country, obviously, other than Ohio State. But
Other than Ohio State, yeah.
They don't have any wins. Like Boise
And
State doesn't have the win. Boise State has the Washington State. Yeah, but Washington State just lost, didn't they?
They did. They
lost
lost to
last
New
night,
Mexico.
Yeah.
To the Lobos. So,
which is interesting. New Mexico's got someone next week. Who do they play? Come on, you're supposed to know this off the top of your head.
I only look at the time. No, they actually have a bye next week, and then they finish with Hawaii.
All right. Was it New Mexico State? Someone I thought was playing New Mexico. Okay. Got that wrong. But anyway, so we're looking at the Big Ten having 4 possible teams in. What does Indiana have to do to say, hey, we're still in the playoffs? Despite what the SEC has done.
They can't
Obviously, a win will do it.
Yeah. Win is obvious. You can't get blown out. And to me, if Ohio State wins by 14-21, I think Indiana's at a threat of not being in the playoff because they're going to say, listen, you played absolutely nobody. And the one team you did play, which is a pure playoff team, you got obliterated. And guess what? We don't want to set up an awesome playoff matchup where it's a 14-21 point win. And they would be justified there. So I think if Indiana loses by single digits, I'll even say by under 14, I think they're fine. But if Ohio State comes in here and let's say it's a 38-20 game or a 38-17 win, something like that, I could very strongly seeing Indiana being bumped out of the playoffs.
I don't think 2 scores does it. 10 to 14 points, no. But if you get to the 17 to 20, that's the threshold where I think they're going to start being like, they don't deserve to be there. If you're hanging there with the Buckeyes with 14 points, any top 5 team in the nation, top 12 team in the nation should be able to do that too, right?
Should be.
Yeah.
But
so I mean, you got to give credit for playing an away game. That's 3 points, right? And then also playing against the number 2 team in the nation. So you're playing the number 2 team in the nation. You're number 5. You're expected to lose. What you lose by is the differentiating factor. So if it's 14 points, I think you're still safe.
I think it all
because that would drop you down to around the 12 range, right? 10 to 12 range.
Yeah,
in my eyes.
It all depends on how everything else shuffles out. So
that's true.
You look at 4 SEC teams. We both agree that's going to happen. Notre Dame's going to get in. They're one of the hottest teams in the country right now. So there's 5 teams. You're going to have 3 for sure in the Big Ten: Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. That's 8. Now you got to fill in a Big 12 winner, which they'll only get 1. The ACC is where it gets interesting after you add, let's just say, a Boise State. So that's 10. You basically have 2 spots up for grabs with a bunch of teams fighting it out. What's interesting about the ACC is if favorites win out, let's just say SMU, Clemson, Miami all win out, it will be SMU, Miami in the ACC championship game. So Clemson will be left out. In fact, they either need a Miami loss or they need SMU to lose their last 2 games. So highly unlikely scenario, all things considered. So Clemson's probably on the outside with their situation in 2 losses. Let's say Miami beats SMU. Let's say Miami wins out, SMU wins out. You've got 9-1 versus or 11-1 versus 11-1. So you're probably going to have 1 ACC team in there. Now you're up to 10 after you've added Boise State in the ACC, and you got a bunch of these teams competing for those final 2 spots. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe Indiana still does get in with 1 loss, but I think they have to keep this a really competitive game for them to make a case.
So you have to leave one of the 2 out, Penn State or Indiana. Which is your choice? I mean, Indiana's dominated everyone. You leave Indiana out?
I mean, it's a really. I don't have Penn State's strength of schedule right off the top, but again, they should be punished too. I think when.
Yeah.
I just don't believe that they have a really strong schedule either. And I think I look at a program like Indiana, I say, okay, I understand that you don't schedule a bunch of tough Power 4, games because you've been Indiana, right? Those weaker Power 4 teams don't go and schedule, the best of the best from the Big 12 or all that stuff. So you typically have your MAC game, you have your Conference USA game. They have things like that. So I understand Indiana not having a strong schedule because they didn't anticipate this type of season. I think Penn State should be punished for not going out and scheduling a really good non-conference opponent when you knew darn well, looking at your schedule, you weren't going to have Oregon, you weren't going to have Michigan. And again, I'm talking beginning of the season, Michigan, we had no idea that they were going to implode. But you didn't have Oregon or Michigan on your schedule. You had one tough conference game on your schedule. You needed to beef up your resume, and they chose not to. And as a result, they should be punished.
One has them actually not too bad, 14th at 9-1. I don't know if I agree with that, but
I would check the math there.
I'm not sure about that source. So I mean, just a quick Google search, 14th. But anyway, we can dive into that more a little later on. So there you have it, man. We think there's going to be 4 teams from the SEC in now, depending on how things shake out. The only way I see 4 teams from the Big Ten is if Indiana beats Ohio State. Or it's got to be really, really close. It's got to be a damn good game. Like a 3-point game or something.
It could be. Because in that scenario, it would be Oregon, Indiana playing in the Big Ten championship game. So Ohio State would be basically 10-2 on the season. They'd get in. Don't know what seed they'd be. And
there's a chance that they could leave out Penn State in that case, I guess. Which would be tough. It would be tough to do. Like, you don't want to do that because Penn State's kind of a name brand.
I think, again, if you look at 4 Big Ten and 4 SEC teams, right, there's your 8. You're basically slotting the other 4 with mandatory requirements. And I'm going to call Notre Dame a mandatory requirement because they are playing at a playoff caliber level. As much as that disgusts me, it's true. So you look at that and you say 4 SEC for sure. We can do a round robin there on who those 4 will be. I'm fine with that. 4 Big Ten with Indiana debatable, and then you have Notre Dame, Boise, ACC winner, Big 12 winner. That's basically what you're saying.
I could see SC knocking off Notre Dame at the end of the season.
I could not.
That would help. That would help even things out. Then you have 4 from the Big Ten, 4 from the SEC, and I think it's easy money from there.
I'm not really sure. I mean, they did have a nice win yesterday against Nebraska, but I really just don't know what you're going to get from that USC team. And
it's a rivalry game. You don't know. You're right.
Yeah, that's true. But Notre Dame really flipped the script this year. We've seen it in the past where they lose and they just keep stumbling. They never really get it. Their offense is clicking under Wrigley. I think that is a dangerous team. Although I will not ever support a team that's not in conference because I think conference games day in and day out are just brutal. And so if you don't have to fight that kind of schedule, I'm always going to question you. You should be punished for not playing in a conference championship game. They do. They cannot be higher than 5th. So they are punished for that, which I appreciate. But I really just don't see Notre Dame losing to USC. And it's really, again, I think you're going to ask yourself the question, a 1-loss Indiana team versus a bunch of 2-loss teams. That's going to be
you're not going to get more than 4 from the SEC. I'm just going to go out there and say that. I don't think you'll get more than 4 from any conference. That would be an absolute travesty for the playoffs. I mean, why even have it? Like, you got to have a mixture of some of the conferences just to know their strengths, especially at the tops of the conference.
But that's not the requirement of the committee. And
sure,
what you want about them, their job is to put the best 12 teams in after they've met the requirements. So you put 5 conference champions in automatically, 4 Power 4, best of the rest. And then you got to find the 7 best teams after that. And I'm just going to go looking off the schedule here. You've got a 1-loss Indiana versus Tennessee or Ole Miss, right?
Mm-hmm.
Start playing the schedule game, and I'm going to say, hey, Tennessee and Ole Miss have a lot tougher schedule than Indiana. So who knows? And I'm leaving out A&M. A&M beats Texas. They're in.
Watch out.
Now you are talking 5 teams because you know right now I'm kind of looking at A&M. They have 2 losses. So if Texas beats them, they have that 3rd loss. They're pretty much out of the equation. Mm-hmm. But they're right back in the equation if they win. And you're talking Texas, Texas A&M, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, all with 2 losses. That's 6 teams.
Mm-hmm. Well, then, I mean, if you can't get it done with the top 4 teams, you know, I don't think it'll go down that far. There's no way that they're going to get 6 teams in. I mean,
I'm not saying 6. I'm making the argument for 5. And then you start
getting an argument.
Then you start getting into the argument Nick Saban was making yesterday, which I really liked, is you're now going to punish a team that makes it to the conference championship and loses versus somebody that's sitting on the couch on that Saturday. It's a really valid argument.
No, I don't think you do that. I think the conference champion losers have a better argument than anyone else.
So you would put a 3-loss conference champion loser over a 2-loss team that didn't play in their conference championship.
Correct. Yes.
I would agree with you there. I do.
I mean, you can't punish a team for losing. Like, I mean, think about it. It could be Ohio State and Oregon or Indiana, Oregon, depending on how things shake out. You're not going to leave one of those teams out. No chance. And obviously, it's a little different with the ACC and the Big 12. The Big 12, I don't think, gets their conference champion loser in.
No,
I don't think there's a chance.
They'd have 2 losses.
That's really a play-in game.
Yeah,
and those conferences they just don't stack up.
Same with the ACC. You have every team in the ACC that has at least 1 loss. SMU has 1 loss. Clemson has 2. Miami has 1. And again, if favorites went out there, you would have 11-1, 11-1 team. So one of those teams will have 2 losses. Obviously, the winner will get in. I can't see a 2-loss Miami team or a 2-loss SMU team. Although I will say SMU's only loss on the year was to BYU. So it is a good loss, tough loss. So,
yeah.
But I cannot see that, especially Clemson yesterday. You went to Pitt without their starting quarterback, and you needed a miracle scramble by Klubnik to win that game. Yeah, I'm not buying them.
Yeah, Klubnik, I don't buy Clemson. I haven't bought them all year. It's just, you know, they beat up terrible teams and then they lose to the big teams. So they don't deserve to be in. I mean, wins matter. Wins do matter. That's the problem. Wins matter versus strength of schedule. Strength of schedule, I think you just have to try to balance that out somehow.
I mean, I disagree simply just because I look at Indiana and I say, great, you beat a bunch of softies all year.
But they dominated. That's what counts.
Yeah, but I mean, we go back to the argument of 2002 Ohio State where you squeak by every single game and you win a national championship because you're the best team. So margin of victory is a little bit suspect. I say at the end of the day, you haven't played anybody, and you shouldn't be rewarded when you don't play anybody, especially when I'm looking at the gauntlet of the SEC where we're talking 16 with 2 losses where they all just galvanized or feasted on
We got to wait till the full resume comes in. Got a couple more weeks of this, and we get to decide, have those real-time debates. So I don't have anything else for y'all. I think Big Ten backers, formerly Big Ten backers, I can't get it off my mind. We are the Buckeye backers. We're out, man. Nothing left to say. It's on to Indiana, the playoff-bound Indiana Hoosiers. I'll say that again. Playoffs and Indiana Hoosiers in the same sentence. Next week, top 5 matchup in the shoe. Can't wait to be there. Buckeye backers are out. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us on the Morning After Show. God bless y'all. Peace.